Hello, thank you so much for being here. I'm Soul Song Sage, and in today's reading, we're going to be taking a look at what is haunting you. So, have a bit of a Halloween theme today, but this reading is timeless for whenever you click on the video. The purpose is really just to take a look at if there's anything from your past that is having a negative impact on you or your life in any way, whether it's something that needs healed or released, or if you need to seek some kind of closure. That's what we're going to be taking a look at today. And I have 3 groups here that you can choose from. The first group, we have the Nightmare Before Christmas Tarot, and the card I pulled is the Queen of Candles, which is the Queen of Wands. For the second group, we have the Divine Feminine Tarot, and the card I pulled is the King of Pentacles. And for group number 3, we have the Phantomwise Tarot, and I pulled the Queen of Pentacles. So whichever group you feel most drawn to, that will be your reading. And if you need a bit more time, go ahead and pause the video because I'm going to go ahead and get started in group number 1. Hello, group number 1. If you chose the Queen of Candles from the Nightmare Before Christmas Tarot, then this is going to be your reading. I'm going to start by putting your significator or signifier card over here. And then I want to go through these oracle cards I have pre-shuffled. This is going to represent your current energy or the energy of the situation that you're in, and you can use this to make sure that this reading is for you, that it seems like it's in alignment with your energy. So to start, we have I like it. I swallow the curses that rose up in my throat, and the keyword is repression. Next, we have the Beaver. We have number 21, Venus. The keyword is beloved. We have I create mindful moments throughout the day, reminding myself that I am love and miracles are natural. And last, we have the Botanist with the keywords parenthood and legacy. Okay, so for some of you, I'm getting a very literal interpretation of these cards. For others of you, it's going to be a little bit more figurative. So keep that in mind. I'm going to start with the literal interpretation. But if that doesn't feel like it's resonating for you, just know that there is an alternate interpretation. But for some of you, I'm getting the sense that family is very important. It's a very big part of your life. With the keyword parenthood, some of you could be parents or are will be parents, soon to be parents. But otherwise, like, it could just be family, relatives. It could be blood family or found family. But there's this sense of being very nurturing, very compassionate, very dependable with the Beaver here. The Beaver talks a lot about creating a home, creating, like, being committed and loyal to something long-term. So, and then with Venus, also it's associated with love. It's romance as well. But it's also associated with creativity. And so for those of you who don't really feel that family is a particularly large part of your life, this could also be nurturing a creative project. This could be with a team. The Beaver is, like, in that sense, more of like a team player, committed, like I said, to the long-term goals. But just in that sense of nurturing something, cultivating something to grow, like with the Botanist, creating a legacy, whether that's like through children, offspring, or if it's like a creative legacy. So while that is the focus of, like, the situation of this group, I am getting the sense that maybe within this need to be so dependable and to be so giving and nurturing towards others, or, or your project, whichever whichever one resonated with you more. It could in a way be both. Like if you're working, like I said, with a team or a group and you're working on a project collaboratively, there could also be those elements. But with this card of repression coming up, it seems that maybe you feel like at this time you are so focused on giving, so focused on being that in that caretaker energy or that nurturing of the project, or whatever it is, that you're not always feeling comfortable to express your own needs. So while overall the situation feels really positive, really beautiful, and like it, Venus also talking about passions and desires and values, like this is something that's very important to you, an important aspect of your life, but there might be a bit of like an imbalance of not always being able to give to yourself in the same way you give to others or to, your creative projects. So that is the general energy I am getting for this group. As always, we will probably refer back to these cards as we get more information from the tarot, but I do want to go ahead and get into that now. So, like I said, this is going to be taking a look at anything from your past that is having a negative impact on you or your, current situation. So we're going to start by getting what from your past is having an effect, what that effect is or influence, the consequence of it, the present moment, how, like what in particular is being impacted by the past. And then we're going to end with some guidance and encouragement to help you figure out how to resolve or heal or process, whatever from your past is affecting you presently, so that you can move forward without carrying any of that unnecessary weight or baggage. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and shuffle out the rest of the cards. So anyone who does not want to watch the shuffling can skip ahead. But for those of you who are going to stick with me, let's start by getting a card to represent your past and what specifically from your past is having a negative or positive. We could leave it as positive, but it doesn't really fit with the theme of haunting. But let's just see what from your past is influencing your present situation. Ooh. We have the Nine of Wands in reverse, and then we also have the Moon. Okay, so next, let's see what consequence the past is having. We have the Eight of Potions, which is the Eight of Cups. Next, let's see what aspect of your present is being affected. Oh, that's a lot. Okay. Okay, we can take two. Four of Potions and the Hermit. Okay, and last, let's go ahead and get a card for guidance and encouragement on how to resolve this. We have the Wheel of Fortune. Okay, so to start with the past, we have the Nine of Wands, or the Nine of Candles in this deck, and the Moon. So what I'm getting from this is that, whatever these past challenges or situations you were in left you feeling burnout. Maybe you felt like it was you against the world. For some of you, I feel there's actually like a couple different directions I feel like this is going in. And for some of you, there's this feeling of having poor boundaries. The Nine of Wands can talk about boundaries and sort of having, being on the defense, on the defensive, or being like prepared, being ready, sort of ready for battle, so to speak, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when it's reversed, it could indicate that either you don't have good boundaries set, and so you are getting burnout and exhausted to the point of wanting to give up, or the alternate way of putting it is that you have too rigid of boundaries, that you are distrustful of others to an unhealthy extent. And I'm not getting that for very many of you. I'm getting more the sense, especially with the energy that we were talking about earlier, of not having enough boundaries set, to maybe be too eager to help others, to say yes even when you should be saying no, pushing yourself to the point of exhaustion, and as a result finding yourself depleted. So this could, for being in the past position, this could be that some of you, because of saying yes to too many things, because of spreading yourself too thin, you have worn yourself out and depleted yourself. Now, being paired with the moon is interesting, because the moon represents a lot of times the unknown, uncertainties, our fears. It could represent confusion, illusion, and maybe that is related to, for those of you who have a lack of boundaries, of like strong, healthy boundaries, it could be that like there is a fear of, of saying no, of what the consequences would be if you weren't there to help, or to support others. And there could also be a misconception that you have to say yes because no one else is going to do it if you don't. No one else is going to be there to provide the support, or, whatever it is. No one else is going to be there to help if you don't do it. Now, for some of you, like I said, I'm not getting this energy as strongly as what I just described. But for some of you in the past, you could have had very strong, rigid boundaries with others. You may have sort of closed yourself off from others, out of fear that, like it is sort of, like everyone's out to get you sort of thing. And that could have been the result of, other things in your past that, caused you to feel that way. By, not having those boundaries, you could have experienced negative, painful situations. You could have been hurt, or, any number of things that caused you to put those defenses up so that you couldn't be hurt again. But like I said, for most of you, I'm getting the interpretation that this is more about being burnout, being exhausted because there are no boundaries of saying no, because there's this fear, or there's this illusion that if you don't do it, things are going to fall apart, or, or this situation's going to become, harmful in some way to those you care about. And, like it could be you you could genuinely want to help. But there's like this misconception that if you don't do it, if you prioritize your own needs, like when you don't have the time or the energy to help someone, that, that they're not going to be able to get through whatever situation they're in. So as a consequence of that, we have the Eight of Cups, or the Eight of Potions, in reverse. So what I'm getting from this is that there is such a need, a feeling of needing to help everyone else and to be the caretaker and the nurturer, that you're not following what would bring you fulfillment, right? So The Eight of Potions is talking about walking away from things, situations, people that aren't serving you, that aren't contributing to your emotional or spiritual fulfillment. And so it is a card in some ways of endings and transitions, but the primary feeling is to follow your heart, to follow where your soul is guiding you, to find what is truly fulfilling. But in the reverse, that shows that like this past situation is preventing you from moving on in the moving forward, moving forward. But you know, I feel like I don't have a strong sense of like what situation in particular this might be. And for some of you, maybe you feel like, oh, I remember when I agreed to do this, or I committed to this and it was like too much for me. And now I'm feeling burnout. But for some of you, this could literally just be past, in the sense of a belief or mindset that you developed in the past, whether this has to do with how you were raised, how you saw your mother or father or caretaker behave. You know, children learn more by how their parents do things than what their parents tell them, right? So you could have been raised in this sort of environment with, you know, like a mother or father, like I said, or whoever raised you, or whoever was a significant influence in your life. They could have always been the yes person. They could have always been there, you know, helping others and taking care of others' needs instead of making time for their own. And they didn't set that example of how to prioritize your own needs and still be there for other people. And as a result, it seems like there's this difficulty of you just listening to your own needs, you following your own, you know, your own desires, what would bring you fulfillment. For those of you who resonated more with the creative project as opposed to like the family oriented, nurturing, caretaker sort of thing, this could have to do with, I mean, maybe that is even that might actually be why I got that second interpretation of the Nine of Wands being like having too rigid of boundaries, is that maybe you don't trust other people to help you with your creative projects. Maybe you feel afraid that like in order for you to bring this creative project to fruition, to actually see it through, you need to do it alone. And you don't trust others to interfere with you know what you're doing. And as a result, that could be preventing you from really seeing the growth and development of your creative projects. There could also be this desire to have more interaction, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just being able to be around and work with and collaborate with like-minded individuals. Maybe you do have that desire, or maybe that is what your soul or your heart is calling you towards. But because of, you know, whatever past experience caused you to feel the need to put up these rigid boundaries to protect yourself, you're limiting that potentiality from, you know, from your life, from your creative project, of having other people, you know, contribute and, you know, allow the project to, you know, develop further and grow and transform. So how this is showing up, how this consequence is showing up within the present, we have the Four of Potions, so the Four of Cups, as well as the Hermit. So for some of you, particularly those of you who resonate more with the caretaker, nurturing, family-oriented sort of energy, there's clearly a lack of time to yourself, for one, right? We have the Hermit. So this is about reflection and introspection, time away from, you know, society, from other people. This is time to yourself for introspection. And the Four of Cups, a lot of times Like the most common interpretation for me, which I do think applies in some way here, is like not seeing what's being offered to you. It's like usually it's like looking at the three empty cups, or they're not necessarily empty, but looking at the three cups and, seeming sort of disappointed or, whatever, but not seeing the fourth cup that's being offered. But another interpretation of this card that people don't talk about very often is it's not necessarily that the figure under the tree, in the Rider-Waite version, the figure is sitting under the tree deep in thought, deep in contemplation. And it's not necessarily that he doesn't see the fourth cup, it's that he is not even distracted by it because he already knows it's more of the same of what he had before that wasn't fulfilling him. And he is like in contemplation about what is missing. Even though he has these cups, he doesn't feel fulfilled. So what is it that's missing? What's that missing, the missing piece? And so it's like not being distracted by shiny objects because he knows that it's not going to fulfill him. And I think that that's what the more relevant interpretation for this card is in this case, is that because you don't have the boundaries of when to say no, of when to prioritize yourself, and not being able to follow, not being able to say no, for one, or to walk away from things that aren't serving you, where there's an imbalance where you are giving so much and not receiving anything in return. Instead of being able to walk away from those situations, and that's not even to say like cut these people from your life or whatever, it's just having boundaries, having a balance, right? So not being able to know when to walk away and to find what is fulfilling for you, like you're not going to be able to figure that out. Like you don't even have the time to contemplate what it is that you want and what it is that will make you feel fulfilled. I am getting, for those of you who are more the creatives of this group, I am getting a similar sort of read on these cards as well, is that because you're pushing yourself, although you have the time to yourself, if you have boundaries up, especially if you're, trying sort of cutting yourself off from the world, you definitely have this hermit energy. But at the same time, there might be this emphasis on focusing so much on your project and feeling like, oh, because I have to do this alone, I got to keep pushing myself and doing this, blah, blah, blah. But you could be literally working so hard and so focused on your project that you're not maintaining like your connection to your why. Like, why are you even trying to accomplish this creative goal or this creative project? Like, what is it that motivated you in the first place? Because if you're just forcing yourself to push through this project and it's not even fulfilling to you anymore, then what are you even doing? What are you investing your time in? But I do also get the interpretation of you're not seeing what's being offered to you, or what could be offered to you if you chose to collaborate, if you chose to lighten your own load and to let other people help you. So that's what I'm getting for these cards. There's a need to reconnect, to what is like really fulfilling. What is your purpose? Or maybe even to question your own motives, especially if this is like a creative process or a creative project. What do you hope to achieve from it? Is it really the inspiration of this idea that you are so passionate about? Or have you gotten sidetracked with, wanting to make money off of it, or wanting to, achieve a certain level of like success or respect or whatever, admiration, whatever ego-driven needs or ego-driven desires might be influencing your work. Because a lot of times, like, we can, like when we're working on something, it can start from a really pure place of passion and inspiration, but then we can get sidetracked when we get too far into it. So maybe there's this need to reconnect to the reason you started in the first place, so that you can move in a direction, you can take your project in a direction that's going to actually be fulfilling and rewarding for you. And then in a similar sense, for those of you who relate to the caretaker energy, if you are being motivated by wanting to help and support other people, there's also the need to understand that if you are never prioritizing yourself, if you are always putting others first, when you really reach a state of burnout, like that's how, they say stress kills. Like that's how you weaken your immune system. And, when you spread yourself too thin and you're not getting enough rest, you're not taking care of your needs, there could be like not only an emotional lack of fulfillment, but physical consequences. And when that happens, you're no good to anyone. So if you truly want to be a nurturing, supportive person to those you care about, you do need to prioritize yourself, especially if you are a parent. I feel like maybe I will get some crap for saying this because I have never given birth before. So I am not a parent, but I have heard, whether inspirational speakers or motivational speakers and different people who are parents, and who have that experience, like they will say, you do not prioritize your children over you. You should always prioritize yourself first. And like, there's a lot of different, reasons. Like I was saying, if you don't take care of your own needs, you're not going to be able to take care of anyone else. But also, most importantly, like I was saying before, children do not learn from what you tell them. They learn by watching what you do. So if you want to make sure that your children are, in a good place, they're healthy, they're well taken care of, they're happy, etc., you need to show them how to do that for themselves. You need to set the example of taking care of your own needs so that they can learn that they need to take care of their own needs as well when they're adults. Obviously, when they're really young, they're not going to be like self-sufficient, but that's the point. And like, whoever you want your children to be, you need to be that for them. You need to become that person that you want to see your son or daughter, or child to become. So that is why you always prioritize yourself first, because you show your children how to prioritize themselves so that they don't pick up the same bad habits of not knowing when to say no and to working themselves to exhaustion, trying to please other people and trying to take care of others instead of themselves. So that is what, there needs to be some reflection. There needs to be some time alone so that you can check, like, even if you're just giving yourself a couple times in the day, checking in with yourself and being like, what do I need right now? That is how you will, be able to be more fulfilled in your life. So, moving on to guidance and encouragement, we have the Wheel of Fortune, which I feel like is really kind of a weird card, a weird card to come up with guidance and encouragement, because this card often talks about things that are outside of our control. And maybe that's the point, is that you need to recognize that there are some things that are outside of your control. You need to not be so resistant to, whether it's a creative project, it's not to be so rigid. You need to loosen up and like worry about the things that you can worry about, but like maybe open up your boundaries and try to go with the flow a bit more, instead of like having your defenses up against other people's input on your creative projects or whatever it is. And for others of you, like what I was talking about with like needing to prioritize yourself, and like I know that parents have a really hard time, especially being like, how do I prioritize myself when my kids always need things, right? But there's a need to figure out like how should I say, like to loosen your grip a little, to trust, to trust, like if you're a parent, to trust that your kids are going to figure that some things they're going to just have to figure out on their own, or that you don't need to like micro, like in the sense of like micromanagement. You don't need to like, what's the term for that for parenting, like a helicopter parent or something. I don't remember the word I'm like trying to think of right now. But like that's not how, like being too controlling, being too, doing too much for your kids actually prevents them from learning how to do things for themselves. And so I feel like that's like a really important thing. It's just to kind of let things go a little, and to release like the need to control so much, and to like allow things to flow in a more natural way, to have a bit more trust, like both in your kids or in your family members, or like, or if it's not necessarily your children but other people that you are trying to help, trying to just like release the need to have that sort of control, like, oh well, if it's not me then it's going to fall apart. It's like, let someone else step up, or let that person who's asking you for help figure it out on their own. Because if like people can get into the habit of over relying on you, if you always make yourself available, they might not, like consciously think of it as like taking advantage of you, but they're just like, oh well, I'll just ask, I need help, so I'll ask so and so. But like maybe it would be good for them to realize that, oh, I can actually do this myself. Like if they're put in that situation, they could realize like, oh, I didn't need to ask anyone else. This is a lot easier than I thought it could be. Or, oh, I can do this instead. Or, like whatever the situation is. It's like having a little bit of trust to like let things go on their own. Let let fate take its course. I don't know. Like there's a need to recognize that you don't need to control everything. You don't need to do everything. You can release that grip in order to, allow others to step up or to figure things out on their own, or whatever it is, But there's definitely this need to, there's this analogy that I was thinking of. I was trying to remember how it was worded, but it was something about like, if that you have like a lot of different responsibilities, a lot of different things, if you have a lot of different things that you're, trying to take care of and do, like you're holding all of these balls, or you're juggling all of these balls, right? But the point is, you can't possibly hold them all. And some of those balls are glass, and if you drop them, they'll break. But others are rubber, and if you drop them, they will bounce. They will bounce back. So the point is to recognize what is a priority and what you can let go of. Obviously, when I'm saying prioritize yourself, I'm not saying don't spend time with your children. But when you are spending time with your children, obviously, like, be fully there, be fully present. But if you're like sleep deprived, or you're not, like if you're, I don't know, like you need to see a chiropractor, your back's hurting, or, like you're not making sure you're eating nutritious meals, or, like your needs aren't being met in some way, you're not going to be able to be there and fully present for your children. Your health is something like, your health is a glass ball. It will shatter if you don't take care of yourself, right? So there's like this need to sort of surrender the things that like that aren't going to break if you drop them. You know, like you can't keep juggling all of the balls. So figure out which ones you can't compromise, you can't, you know, you can't let go of, and then figure out what you can. So I don't know. I hope that made sense. But there's just a need to have a greater sense of trust to let things take their course and not put like the burden on yourself to do everything, you know? You don't need to do everything. You can let some people figure things out on their own. Or like for the creative project, you don't need to control every aspect of your project so tightly. You can loosen up, you know, and open yourself up to getting support or, you know, like input, feedback, or collaboration, like whatever it is. It kind of depends on what kind of project you're talking about. But whatever it is, it's like trust that you can loosen your grip a little bit so that things can take the course they need to. Overall, it just seems like there's more than a past event. There's just this this mentality, this belief concerning your boundaries, and concerning your relationship to other people, etc., that needs to be reassessed. All right, so to end us off, I just want to get a couple of these lyric cards. Any last messages for group number 1? My best is what comes next. And that's the thing. If you do take the time to take care of your needs, everything is going to be improved as a result. Like the quality of your time, you know, like say if you're working really hard and you're like, oh, I got to finish working on this, but you're like already burnt out. If you rest and take a break and get back to it, the time it takes you to finish will be much less because you're actually in a better place mentally, physically and emotionally, right? All of the above, in order to continue. So let's see what else we get. I'm diamond, you know I glow up. Okay, and now I just want to get one of these cards for any last messages. Baby, don't you worry, these roads we walk will all become paths. Well, there you go. Don't worry so much. Let go of your need to control everything. Find a happy balance, and you'll be able to find your way towards what's actually fulfilling to you. So that is what I have for you, group number 1. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if this resonated, if things made sense. If you have any feedback, I would love to hear it. And I hope to see you in my next one. Hello, group number 2. If you chose the King of Pentacles from the Divine Feminine Tarot, this is going to be your reading. Go ahead and put your signifier card over here. So to start off, I want to take a look at these oracle cards that I have pre-shuffled. This is going to represent your current energy or the energy of the situation that you are in. And you can use this to make sure that you selected the right reading, that they're, you know, that the energy seems to be in alignment with yours. Yeah, so the first card we have is So What? Let go. Even if you don't have an answer yet, you can start the fight. And the key word is determination. Next, we have the Hawk. We have number 9, Sagittarius. The key word is expand. We have I find a deeper meaning and personal growth amid the discomfort. And last, we have the Queen. with the keyword determination and sacrifice. So you got the keyword determination twice. I also love that the colors, there seems to be a sort of color scheme for this group. I didn't notice that with group number 1, but this group seems to have a very clear color scheme going on. And I'm also just getting overall just this feeling of ambition. So I don't know if it is, a goal you have, something you're trying to achieve or manifest, but there seems to be something, like even with the archer, there's something you're aiming for. There's something that you have your sights set on. And what I'm getting, especially with this card here, is that although you have this clear vision, you have this clear goal, whatever it is that you are trying to pursue, you might not know how to get there. You might not know the steps you need to take in order to reach your destination. But what I'm getting is that there's this need for a perspective of the bigger picture, to keep the bigger picture in mind, like whatever your goal is, that's your focus. And, Sagittarius talks about expanding your perspective. And the hawk also has a lot to do with perspective, because the hawk has, the bird's eye view. But at the same time, the hawk is it has such good eyesight that it's able to see the details as well. But it seems like maybe you're not able to see the details. You're not sure what those particulars are that you need to focus on in order to reach your goal. And that could be causing discomfort. It may make you feel uncomfortable to take steps towards your dreams or your goals, whatever it is, if you're not sure how you're going to get there. But you have the keyword of determination twice, and the Queen talks about making tough decisions. With great responsibility comes great sacrifice, but there's this need to maintain your sense of power, your willpower, as well as just like your sense of like autonomy, of like, if this is what you want, you have to make that choice to go ahead and move forward, regardless of like not knowing what every step along the way is going to look like. And that's where you need to get comfortable within the discomfort. You need to become okay with like the uncertainty of how you're going to get there. The hawk can also talk about being like a divine messenger. So you may be getting messages like signs, synchronicities, things like that, that are encouraging you on this path. You may feel very strongly that this goal that you have is somehow related to like your greater purpose in life. But either way, there seems to be like this almost spiritual aspect towards it. It's like this is something that your soul is calling you towards. And so you need to maintain whatever the situation, like whatever the particulars of your situation right now, there's this need to maintain that vision, that bigger picture. And when facing tough decisions, that's how you will make those decisions, is by maintaining your focus on the bigger picture, of seeing the larger perspective is going to help you with the smaller details along the way as you go. But it does sound like either you are in the early stages of this, or you are just maybe questioning your path, whether you're on the right track. But either way, like the situation is calling for you to move forward, even though there's a bit of uncertainty. So that's what I'm getting overall for this group, the current energy of this group anyway. It is interesting that you chose the queen. I said queen because you got the queen, but no, you chose the King of Pentacles, because Pentacles are such, they're earth. It's the element of earth. So the court cards are, people who are more practical, down to earth, but also like you may be the kind of person that like wants to see it to believe it sort of thing. And so maybe you don't want to take, you know, take those leaps of faith, or like take any risks or chances without having such a clear plan. Like maybe you want a very practical plan laid out before you start moving forward. But this is, you know, like that usually that never, you know, you can never really plan for what you don't know is, you know, going to happen next. So but there is this sense of encouragement that you should be moving forward regardless. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the tarot, if that sounded like, you know, where you are currently in your life. I want to start by taking a look at what from your past is haunting you or influencing, you know, this situation. This could be an actual event that happened, or it could just be like ways of thinking, ways of viewing things, you know, like mentality, belief, etc., that were formed in the past that you've been carrying with you. And then I want to take a look at what the actual consequence of that is, of the past, what the influence, the effect on the present. And this is going to represent what aspect of the present the past consequences having an effect on. And then we'll end with some guidance and encouragement for how you can heal or shift, you know, if it's beliefs, how to shift, or things to let go of, you know, what, I guess it'll depend on what the actual cards come out as, but how to move forward essentially is what the guidance and encouragement card is going to represent. So I am going to shuffle out all of the cards. That way anyone who doesn't like watching the shuffling can skip ahead. But for those of you who are going to stick with me while I do this, let's start by getting a card to represent the past. What aspect of your past is currently influencing you or your present situation? We have the Ace of Swords and the Page of Wands. I don't know if I actually need to cover these since this channel is not monetized. So I don't think it could hurt me even if I did not censor the cards, but you know, just to be safe, we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so next let's get a card for the consequence of the past. How is the past having an effect on your present? I don't know if that really wanted to come out or not. We'll keep going. We have the Ace of Cups and Judgment in reverse. Okay, so up next, we want to see what aspect of your present is being affected. And we have the Knight of Pentacles in reverse. So next, let's get a card for guidance. How to resolve the past influence. We have the Empress. Thought I was going to have to censor that one too. Oh, we have the Empress in reverse. Okay. Okay, so I decided to just put washi tape on the cards like I did with the signifier instead of trying to mess with the little crystal stars, although they're cute. Since I want to pick the cards up when I'm talking about them, I just figured it'd be easier. So Anyway, what past event or whatever is currently influencing you at present? We have the Ace of Swords and the Page of Wands, which I'm getting like, even though the topic of this reading was supposed to be what's haunting you, I feel like overall this is really positive. So in a way, like there's a mix. We'll get to the negative aspect of it, but overall, like, these cards are really positive. Like, this is signifying to me like the idea, the mental breakthrough, the clarity you got when you first thought of your dream or your goal, whatever ambitions you have. Like, I feel like this was like a breakthrough moment for you. That is, that's what the main thing that is influencing you at present is this idea. And with the Page of Wands, it's really more of the same energy. It's like wanting to begin something, and it's like, could be creatively, something creative. It could be like a passion, or just like some sort of inspiration that is driving you towards, whatever this goal is. But the Page of Wands does have an air of inexperience, right? So you may have this great idea, but maybe you lacked the skills, or the knowledge of how to actually make your dream into a reality. Like, maybe it is something that requires you to learn new things, or to do things, like things that are outside of your comfort zone, things that you don't have experience with. And so maybe there is a sort of lack of confidence in your ability to achieve this dream or this goal, whatever it is. But like, this idea, this spark, this creative spark and inspiration is really like what is driving you and what is having such a strong influence on your present. But it just seems like, the Page of Wands, I'm not saying you currently are, but like, at least when you had this idea, when you first had this inspiration, like there could be a level of immaturity. Like I said, it could just be more geared towards this emphasis on the inexperience of, like, of whatever it is you're trying to do. You lack that experience, the know-how of how to do it. But there may also just be a certain level of immaturity in some way of how, like, that is affecting how you would approach this. And the actual consequence, how this is showing up. On the one hand, we have the Ace of Cups, which this is talking about like emotional fulfillment. It's love, in a lot of contexts, it has to do with like relationships. But in this context, I'm getting more of like being very emotionally invested in whatever this is, and of following your heart in order to pursue this. But at the same time, like, with that level of, perhaps immaturity, there could be, how should I say, like, you may be too driven by your emotions. You may be too emotionally invested in it, which we have the Judgment card here in reverse. So it could be that your emotions are clouding your judgment because you are so passionate about this project, which, the passion is a great thing, but, like, there needs to be a balance. But since I was getting, like, from the fact that you chose the King of Pentacles as your signifier card, I am getting the sense that many of you are very practically minded. And so another way that this may be playing out is that because you are so emotionally invested in whatever this dream is, you are fearing the judgment of others in pursuing this dream. Like maybe it's like you're afraid that people are going to be like, like, you can't do that, or who do you think you are, or, like, this is so unrealistic, or, like, get your head out of the clouds, or whatever it is. It can play out in so many different ways. People can be judgmental in an endless number of ways, right? But there could be this fear of how others will perceive you if you continue to pursue this. Even though, like, this is where your heart is calling you, and maybe for some of you, despite all of this ambitious energy I'm getting, we did have this lyric where it says, like, let go, even if you don't have an answer yet, you can start the fight. Like, maybe there are quite a few of you that are still hesitating. The Judgment card, I also think of as like a higher calling card, and so when it's in reverse, it's like you're not answering the call. Maybe you're afraid to answer the call because you feel like you lack the experience, because you're afraid of what other people will think, because you are not sure how to get to your dream, how to achieve your goal. It seems too unclear. And so maybe that is what your current situation is like this. There's this conflict between, what you want to pursue and actually just making the decision to move forward. We had the Queen as well, which, the keyword is, it's the second one's hidden, but it's, the keywords are determination as well as sacrifice. And that card talks about making tough decisions. And it's like, that might be, like, maybe you haven't yet made that decision because, like, you have to sacrifice what other people could potentially think about you. You have to, like, sacrifice your ego to a certain extent and be, humble yourself and be okay with people judging you or criticizing you for what you truly want to do. But if that's what your heart is calling you towards, then obviously you're not going to have a sense of fulfillment unless you just do that. So yeah, so I feel like that's the general sense of what I'm getting, is that, like, despite your heart calling you towards this, there's still a fear and there's a hesitation to answer that call. So how that's playing out in the present, we have the Knight of Pentacles in reverse. So this can be interpreted, well, I mean, most cards can be interpreted multiple ways, but in this situation, typically the Knight of Pentacles is the slow and steady progress, like reliable, dependable, stable. That's like the energy of the Knight of Pentacles. But, like, even though the progress is slow, it is steady, it is forward movement. So when the Knight of Pentacles is reversed, it could be literally, for some of you, it's like the standstill. Like, there's no forward movement at all because being held back by the uncertainty of how to make it possible, your inexperience, your fear of judgment of others, any of those things could be preventing you from taking that next step to move forward towards your dreams. But there's also another interpretation of this, is a sense of stubbornness. So although I am getting, for most of you, like, it's more leaning towards the feeling of inertia, of not moving forward, of being, too afraid to take the next step. But for some of you, especially if you resonated with, like, being maybe a little too driven by your emotions, by getting swept away by your emotions, and, it could also be a sense of, like, impatience, of feeling like, oh, I lack so much experience. I have so much I have to learn, and I have to do so much, that you're, like, feeling impatient. You're not wanting to take the time to take the proper steps in order to do things the right way in a stable, reliable fashion. But for most of you, I am getting that sense of more the hesitation to even begin. It's like you have this dream you're called towards, but like it's just sitting there. It's just in your head right now. You haven't taken practical physical action towards your goals for whatever reason that, like that we talked about before. So moving on to the guidance of how to resolve this is we have the Empress in reverse. So for some of you, if you related more to the feeling of impatience, of wanting to just move forward because you feel like you have so much ground to make up, there could be a sense of like overworking yourself, of not taking care of your needs because you're pushing yourself too hard. But for most of you, especially if you related to the fears of moving forward and like feeling like you're sort of stuck in this place of like not knowing how to bring your dreams, bring your ideas into reality and actually work on achieving them. There is actually a need to focus more on earth qualities. So maybe if you didn't relate to having like the earth energy of being practical and like down to earth and, whatever, if you didn't relate to that, maybe you were attracted to that because that is what you need, right? Like I was getting a lot of fire energy and ambition and all of that. But there needs to be a way to ground that into the physical by taking, practical steps, by taking real action in order to manifest your ideas into reality. So there's definitely a need for that, a need for grounding, a need for, grounding can help you establish a sense of like trust and stability despite your uncomfortability of like not knowing how you're going to do it, of feeling like you lack the experience and the know-how. Like that's what this card is talking about. I find a deeper meaning in personal growth amid the discomfort. Like you can't grow, you can't develop, you can't expand without getting outside of your comfort zone. If you're always inside your comfort zone, you're not going to ever challenge yourself, and therefore you're not going to grow and develop as an individual. So, if that's how you if that's how you feel, if you're afraid to take the next steps forward because you're afraid of whatever, you're inexperienced, judgment, all of the above, grounding exercises can be really helpful for that. But I think that like overall, like the message here of the Empress being in the reverse is to understand that like even if you do lack experience, you have so much like value inherent within you. Like you need to tap into that like abundant energy of understanding your own worth, and that like you being, like whatever phase you're in, whatever stage, like there's no shame in that. Everyone starts as a beginner, right? Whatever you're doing, even if there are other people who have been, like working on, like they're so much further than you in these like skill sets or whatever it is that you're trying to do, like they had to start somewhere, like they had to start as a beginner too. So there's no shame in that. There's no, like you shouldn't be worried about other people judging you for your lack of experience because you lack the experience. But if that bothers you, the only way that you can remedy that is to get outside of your comfort zone and to work on those things. Even if that means people will see you in your process of growth and development, like everyone has that. So you need to understand that like your sense of self-worth, like that should not be diminished because of it. Let's see, is there anything else I'm getting from that? I mean, I feel like that is pretty much the main message that I'm getting from this card. But since the Empress does talk about creativity and, like literal creation of like birthing, like nurturing and birthing, whether it's an actual human or a creative project, a dream, etc. It's like, if you don't, you won't be able to do anything if you don't take the first step. So if you worry too much about the details, if you get lost in the details of how am I going to do this, or what are other people going to think, or, like, I don't have the experience now, how am I going to do this? Instead of seeing the bigger picture, you're not going to be able to birth your creation into the world. And like I said, like, if you don't know how to do something, instead of spending time thinking about how you don't know how to do it or how you lack the experience, just start doing it so that you can gain the experience. And understand that there is no shame in wherever you are now. I don't know. I hope that made sense, but like, I feel like the cards today were pretty straightforward. Like, you are being called towards this. You have this dream, you have this vision, and the only way to do it is to get outside your comfort zone and start taking real action to make it into a reality. Maintain your sense of determination and keep the big picture in mind so that you don't lose track of what you're doing or where you're trying to go. I think I want to go ahead and just get a few of these cards to end us off here for any last messages. I know these trials I face. I know I'll overcome them. Like, for sure, you need to know, like, if you do relate to like the feeling of inexperience or not sure how you can, go forward, like, know that you are perfectly capable. You're perfectly capable of getting there, because like what you desire, what inspires you, what moves you, what your heart is calling you towards, is there for a reason. And you wouldn't have those dreams if they weren't something you were capable of achieving. So that's like a really important thing, like, especially like with what I was saying about the hawk being a divine messenger. Like, you are being called to this. Like, we have the judgment card too, which is, like I said, a sign of like your higher calling. But it's up to you whether you answer it or not, right? But know that that you wouldn't have it if you weren't capable of doing it. So let's get another one of these. And then maybe we'll get one guidance card. We'll see. What last messages for group number 2? Any last messages? No fear, because I know the way. As long as you keep track of the bigger picture, as long as you continue to follow where your heart is leading you, you'll get to where you need to go. All right. So last but not least, let's see what we have here. Even in the distant future, never forget the you of right now. I really love that. Especially because we were talking about, like, if you are feeling inexperienced, like, that does not reflect on your value as like an individual. But it's important to remember, like, where you're coming from, how, like, and as you progress, as you grow, as you get closer to your dreams, like, to remember, to remember where you started, right? So that you can, have that sense of accomplishment. It's interesting. I'm feeling like these cards are suddenly poised very similarly, although she has a wand. But yeah, there's a deeper meaning to this journey you're on. Sorry, my voice is starting to get a little hoarse. But anyway, it's all the more reason for you to feel a sense of accomplishment and to appreciate your own growth because you started out with a lack of experience. You know, like your accomplishment would have much less meaning if it was just easy and you saw how to do it right away, right? So appreciate the journey, appreciate the opportunity that it allows you to grow and develop as an individual, and celebrate the successes that you have along the way. But definitely don't let your fears, don't let this feeling of inexperience hold you back from pursuing what you're being called towards, because like there's a meaning that you feel this call. There's a meaning you have this dream or feel this inspiration. So trust that, and let go of your worries about it. So group number 2, that is what I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. And if this resonated, if you have any feedback, I would love to hear it. Let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to see you in my next one. Hello, group number 3. If you chose the Queen of Pentacles, I almost said page, the Queen of Pentacles from the Phantomwise Tarot, then this is going to be the reading for you. So to start off, I want to take a look at these oracle cards that I have pre-shuffled, and you can use this as a sort of energy check to make sure that it sounds like this is the reading for you. So to start off, we have telepathy, not too fast and not too slow. Let's match each other's pace and go. The keyword is balance. Next, we have cosmic egg. We have number 56, progressions. The keyword is journey. We have when I'm in alignment with the love of the universe, peace cannot be disrupted. And then last we have the dancer. Keywords are self-expression and strength. So this is a very powerful energy I am getting from this group. And I'm also getting the sense that if you are watching this, you are a very spiritual person. If you don't consider yourself to be spiritual, well, on the one hand, maybe this reading is not for you, but keep in mind that being spiritual isn't necessarily being religious or having a certain belief in any one thing. It is more about a sort of self-awareness, a way of, living mindfully. It's a way of being rather than, something you're believing in. But there's definitely like this sense of like a higher level of consciousness from this group. And I feel like, especially with this, the affirmation card, talking about being in alignment, how peace cannot be disrupted, I'm really getting the sense that like this energy, the cards are not necessarily referring to what's going on with you externally, like what is going on in your life. This is more about the internal journey of your soul. And it seems like this is a really pivotal moment of your life, not in the sense of what external changes are occurring. Obviously, internal changes will eventually affect the external, but this is just a really, really powerful, really beautiful energy of you really coming into who you are, into alignment with who you are, with greater like awareness and knowledge of yourself. It's really interesting to me. This is the last card of the deck, and so is this one. And normally, like in most oracle decks, I don't really feel like that's, necessarily a significant thing, because a lot of decks are really organized alphabetically. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. But neither of these ones are. But like with the cosmic egg, most of the cards in this deck are organized by the 4 elements, right? So like fire, earth, air, water. But there are 7 cards. I don't know how many cards in each of the other elements there are. It's definitely more than 7 though. But there are 7 cards that have this circle symbol to represent the element of spirit. And this card, each of those cards are associated with the different chakras, and this one is with the 7th chakra, so the crown chakra. And it represents a sense of completion, a sense of interconnectedness, of having like a higher awareness. And with this sense, like maybe you don't feel like you're enlightened yet, or different people could be on different phases of this journey. I'm getting like some people might be further along than others, but there is this sense that you are attaining that. And if you haven't, if you don't feel like you're there yet, maybe you feel like you've only sort of had a glimpse of it, but you're definitely in tune with this. You are, how should I say, like, it's interesting because the Queen of Pentacles, I don't usually associate her with this. Like, the pentacles represent, they're associated with the earth element. And so I get a sense of being grounded, down to earth and whatnot. But in this case, with these cards that I'm getting, like the sense of you being or becoming more firmly grounded in who you are. The Dancer with the card of self-expression and strength. Partly the Dancer talks about being present, being in the moment, and not letting your past define you or influence, how you perceive yourself. You're not limited by your past, which is, funny for the topic of this reading, is to figure out what from your past is haunting you. But like I said, this is the journey you are on. So you might not be there yet, but this is like coming into that realization, like, when you think about how every single individual on this planet is unique, no 2 people are alike. You are literally one in billions. I almost said a billion, but it's more than that. But anyway, what sense does it make to be here as such a unique, special individual and then try to live your life as someone else? It makes no sense. And so, like, that's what this card talks about, is realizing that you don't care what other people think, that you are not going to try to cater to other people's desires of how you are. You are going to be yourself without shame, of not being afraid to let the world see you, see who you really are, and to express yourself authentically. So I really feel like, this journey card, it's really making me think that this is like, where you are now is like a huge pivotal moment in your soul's journey. And it will dictate the course of your life and how you approach life, how you live, how you exist as an individual. But it is less, like I was saying, it's less to do with your external circumstances. You might not see much going on or much change in your external reality right now, but there's something going on a soul level, in a spiritual sense, that is huge and just really powerful. And like, with the sense of this being like a journey, and some of you might be further along than others, some of you might have a stronger sense of who you are and a stronger confidence about that, but for some of you, maybe you don't feel like you're there yet, and you're not sure that you can actually get there. And I feel like that's where this card is coming in, is like, not too fast and not too slow. Don't try to don't worry about how long it's taking you. It's it's a very powerful journey you are on. So take it at a pace that is comfortable for you, and trust that incremental progress will make a huge difference eventually. So, for others of you who are further along, I'm getting the sense that you are already aware that you can go at your own pace, and you have this sense of balance. in your life. But for those of you who aren't feeling that solid sense, or, you know, like that grounded sense of who you are, that shouldn't be a discouragement to you. This card even talks about how having gone through a period of self-doubt can actually strengthen your resolve, strengthen your understanding without question, without second guessing yourself. Like, you can, because you went through that period of doubt, you can feel with like greater certainty when you find, you know, like when you find that alignment, when you find, you know, like who you truly are, when you connect with your highest self or your deepest self, whichever way makes more sense to you. But when you can actually get in touch with your intuition, with your inner knowing, to have that certainty, it's the period of doubt that actually strengthens that, because then you have something to, you're like, oh, but now I get it. You know, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, overall, it's just a very powerful energy that I'm getting, like just soul growth and development, realizing yourself, like self-actualization is what I'm getting from this group. So if that sounds like something, you know, regardless, like I said, regardless of where you are on that journey, if that sounds like something that you connect to, that you resonate with, I do want to go ahead and get into the tarot now. So I want to take a look at what particularly from your past is having some influence on this journey, what the actual consequence of it, like how that influence is showing up. I want to look at what in your present is, like what in particular is being affected by the past. And then I want to end with some guidance and encouragement for how to, you know, move forward and to continue on this journey that you are on. So I am going to go ahead and shuffle out all 4 of these cards. So if you're, you know, not interested in watching the shuffling, you can by all means skip ahead. For those of you who are going to stick with me though, let's go ahead and start by getting a card to represent what aspect of your past is influencing you in the present moment. Nope. Fell on the floor. We have the Queen of Swords in reverse. So what is the consequence? What is the consequence of the past? What effect is it having on the present? We have the Queen of Wands. What aspect of the present is being influenced by the past? We have the Hanged Man in reverse. And last, what guidance and encouragement group number 3 needs to hear in order to resolve this? We have the Ace of Swords. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say that it's really interesting that we have 3 of the 4 queens that have come out in this reading, even though the first one was a signifier card. I shuffled until, well, I shuffled and then like drew until I got like the first court card. So It wasn't like mindfully selected. But yeah, it's interesting that there's so much queen energy. And there's really so many different ways that I feel like I can interpret these cards that I'm not sure where to begin. But I think that I want to start by talking about the possibility that this Queen of Swords in reverse actually represents someone in your life, or at least like in the past, that had a negative impact on you. So this is not always the case, but a lot of times when I get swords, court cards in reverse, a lot of people associate wands, like the negative aspect of wands is that they can be narcissistic. But with my personal experiences with, I would say, a king of swords, I do think that narcissism, like actual narcissism, we're not name calling here, like the actual personality disorder, I think can show up as a negative aspect of the swords. And obviously, I'm sure that it could show up in any of the suits, but I'm thinking of the harsh words, the sharp tongue, that sort of the psychological abuse, right? Because swords represent the mind and our thoughts. So that's not to say, that necessarily like your mother was a narcissist or is a narcissist. Or even that, like whoever this represents, that they're for sure like they have narcissistic personality disorder. But something to that effect is possible for some of you. I am really getting that there was like, someone who was like uncaring, insensitive towards your emotions, who had harsh critical judgment on you, that made you feel bad about yourself and question yourself and things like that. I'm not sure how else to like describe that, but just like it's possible that like the Queen of Swords in reverse is like representing someone who had a lot of influence on you either growing up or at some point in your past. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, although parents can have like, if they are the ones raising us, at least they can have a huge impact in our development. And I guess also if they weren't there, if they weren't present, that has a big impact as well. But like I said, that's not the only form of that's not the only interpretation of this card. This could also be an aspect of yourself. For some of you, you could have experienced a lot of self-criticism, which of course that can happen if you had someone in your life that was highly critical of you. You learn to be critical of yourself as well. But there could have been some other event or life event or whatever that caused you to develop the tendency to be so hard on yourself. But this could also represent like a sense of like indecision, of not having that like clear, decisive, ability of discernment. For many of you, I'm getting more the sense of like the Queen of Swords was a person in your life. But it is so interesting to me to see the Queen of Wands being the result of that. And again, there's like so many different ways that this could be interpreted. But for some of you, it could be like if, say, for example, that this was your mother and your mother was very harsh and critical of you. Maybe you found another like mother-like figure that you admired or were drawn to more, or felt like more close to than your own mother, like if that's who it was in your life, that sort of was inspiring to you. But for a lot of you, I'm getting that the Queen of Wands is more representing you, which is interesting because we have the Queen of Pentacles, but like maybe this is like what you have aspired to. Like the Queen of Wands is very confident. She is very creative. very energetic, social, maybe a little disorganized. And if you are a victim of like psychological abuse, or well, any abuse really, you know, like disorganization can definitely stem from that, like with CPTSD. But there could also just be like having such a rigid, controlling environment has made you want to break free of that and want to, you know, like embrace a little bit more chaos, a little bit more spontaneity, even. Just something that is not so rigid and confining. There might be like this desire to you know, pursue that direction, to focus on that kind of energy. There's also a sense, though, if whether this was like a person or not, this sort of emphasis of like maybe your childhood was so rigid, was very controlled, was very, you know, oppressive, really, and this focus on intellectualism, of, you know, rationality, of like stifling your emotions. This could have also led you, that could literally be what led you to be more spiritual, to get more in touch with your creativity as a form of expression, or to trust more like your intuition, in the sense, you know, like what you're being drawn towards on a spiritual level, instead of just over analyzing everything. Although for some of you, there could also be like, if this was an aspect of yourself, there could have been a tendency to overthink things and to have like a sort of pessimistic outlook on things. And as a result, you have this desire to break free from that. If you were indecisive and, you know, questioned yourself, there's a desire to have more confidence. Like I'm getting like, there's whatever this is, whether it was someone in your life or whether it is an aspect of yourself, this aspect of your past has pushed you towards wanting to pursue this sort of Queen of Wands energy, which in a sense is like a super powerful thing. But if this is not, how should I say, you might be aware of this, like maybe this makes sense to you, but if this hasn't been understood on like a deep level, that could be why you are getting the Hanged Man in reverse for the present moment, of how this is playing out in the present. Because you may have this desire, but if this hasn't been resolved, if this hasn't been healed, then there could be this fear of what other people think of you. There could be this resistance. There's, again, so many different ways to interpret this card, but the Hanged Man being in reverse, let's start with upright. It's always easier that way, right? It can indicate a sort of stagnancy, or like, how should I say, like being stuck. But this individual seems okay with it. And he is okay with the potential judgment of other people. He is okay. It's like, normally there's like a little halo sort of thing to indicate that being stuck is okay with, like, there's being stuck has led to a sense of like enlightenment, insight, a light bulb moment, that kind of thing. It's like an understanding. I'm like trying to decide how in depth to get into this explanation. But if you've watched any of my readings before, you might have caught like me talk about how the major arcana cards are really this. It's like the bigger spiritual events in your life, the turning points, it's not so much like the minor arcana is usually, they're usually associated with like the smaller day-to-day events, and people think of the major arcana as the big events, the big turning points. But I actually feel like more specifically while they can be interpreted that way, they're more an indication of what is going on a soul level. And when you do look at the cards in order, although, you know, the original tarot didn't even have an order for those cards, but regardless, there is a sort of sense to what order the tarot, the major arcana are put in. But yeah, the Hanged Man is like when there's this realization, because one cannot move forward in their life at that moment, it allows for this opportunity of reflection. If the individual can surrender to the moment, to, you know, embrace the pause, they can have this sort of insight of realizing what had been driving them before was not, you know, what they really wanted to be motivated by. And, you know, the Hanged Man talks a lot about like what other people think, of being okay with what other people think, you know, like we were talking about with the Dancer card here. And there's this realization that even if he looks ridiculous, even if people don't understand, you know, why he's not following, you know, the normal path of, you know, like societal standards, whatever, he's okay with it because he has this understanding that there's something greater that is driving him. And if he focuses on that, then none of the other crap matters, right? And that is why it comes before the Death card. A lot of people refer to the Death card as actually a death of the ego, which in reality, you don't want to kill your ego. It serves a necessary function. You just want to be able to transcend it and see from a higher perspective, so you're not driven solely by ego needs. But anyway, the Hanged Man, it's that realization of that like inner knowing, of getting in tune with one's own wisdom instead of worrying about what other people think or what other people say. But when the Hanged Man is in reverse, it can sometimes indicate that there is still a fear of that. In some cases, like if you did experience like emotional abuse or anything like that, there could be a sense of martyrdom with the Hanged Man. But more so, I'm getting that there's like, you know, especially with the drive and the ambition of the Queen of Wands, this desire to, you know, like live life more fully and creatively and spiritually and all of these things. I guess spiritually might not actually be a good aspect to include in that list, but I hate that these cards are like slightly, maybe they're like the exact same size, but anyway. But there could be this sense of like wanting to push forward, because you are still worried about what other people think, especially like if you have this figure is still around in your life, or they're still having, or if you haven't healed from it, they're still having that influence on you, even if they're not present in your life. There could be this fear of feeling the need to move forward. How should I say this? Sorry, my brain is like not braining today. There could be this desire to push forward in your external life, you know, to make progress, you know, towards success of whatever it is that you're doing. And so there's this resistance to take this pause. But like what function this pause is serving in your life is huge. Like whatever you think is important that you're trying to work towards or achieve, like this is more important. This is what will lead you to fulfillment, and this is what will lead you to success as well. But success motivated from knowing yourself and standing strong in who you are and what is in alignment with you, as opposed to like being driven by wanting to prove this person wrong, like even if this person isn't like literally still in your life, like there's still often like our sense of self-worth can be negatively impacted by people in our lives if we allow them to. And so that can like drive us to have the like success by society's standards. So there might be like this drive that you have might be making you more resistant to accepting this pause in order to you know, to go on this journey, the internal journey, if that makes sense. But yeah, overall I'm getting more a sense of like there is a resistance towards pausing, towards doing the inner reflection, which feels kind of weird to me because I felt like this was such a strong energy. For some of you, if you resonated with like being in this place and being further along with this journey, it could simply be that you have gone through this pause already. Like you have taken the time to self-reflect and to have that like sort of like insightful moment of like realization of like not caring what other people think. And so you could be moving out of that. But I'm actually getting like, for many of you, you are still worried about what other people think. And while this drive is like a really positive thing, and it's great to, you know, want like if you're a creative and you're like in touch with like creative inspiration and actually like, you know, giving it an outlet and expressing yourself through it, that's a really positive thing. But don't let the ambition, don't let this need to run away from this cause you to neglect this part of your journey, because this is the journey that is most important. I don't know. I hope that that makes sense. I'm not really sure how else to word that. So if it does make sense, please please let me know in the comments so that I know if I'm even intelligible in these readings. But yeah, moving on, let's go ahead and look at what the guidance and encouragement has to say. We have the Ace of Swords, and so this is the card of like the mental breakthrough of, you know, having clarity. And it is interesting because I had been picking up on some of you might have developed this old mentality that is not serving you anymore, or maybe, you know, maybe you've already surpassed it, but having a tendency that was developed in the past to be a little more indecisive, to be unsure of yourself. And even if you want to have that confidence, maybe it's a sort of false confidence and you're like, you know, it's sort of like the fake it till you make it type thing. But it's like, you don't need to fake it. If you resolve this, if you heal this, you can actually be more decisive. You can actually be more confident and sure of yourself. And the best way to do that, like obviously, like I said, you know, if you need to heal or process whatever this was in your past, in addition to that, it is like I guess like the practice of, I guess in that sense, practice or fake it till you make it would still apply. Like you could still do that, but of being more discerning, of making the tough decisions to cut through, you know, the sort of illusions of, you know, whatever psychological influence this has had on you, to cut that away. I don't feel like I'm expressing that very well. But there just seems to be this need to be more discerning, to make the hard decisions that you don't want to make, and to cut away things that are not serving you anymore. And also to sort of maybe apply this sense of clarity to your past. You need to have a better understanding of your past, and in a sense of like, I guess, forgiveness, really. Forgiveness is not about the person you're forgiving. It's about you. It's about your way of releasing resentment, because resentment is like poison. You poison yourself by resenting others. You don't poison them by resenting them. They don't, like maybe you express it to them, maybe you don't, but it doesn't have an effect on them necessarily. But the resentment is sitting inside of you and it's toxic. So in order to find forgiveness, like say you did have a narcissist in your life, maybe just understand that like narcissists are raised, they're not born that way. And although that doesn't excuse what they did to you, although it doesn't mean that you deserve to be treated that way, it is like important to recognize, like, although everyone has free will, it's like they were raised that way. They experienced the same abuse that they ended up, like hurt people. And so although like forgiving someone doesn't mean that you should like allow them to remain in your life, like we're talking about the sword here. So, if you need to cut people from your life, do so, but do so while still forgiving them. Like still have forgiveness, give them grace, and understand that they did, like their actions and their behaviors, it's a sign of where they are on this. So like if they haven't, spiritually evolved, so to speak, if they haven't raised their levels of consciousness, if they haven't healed their shit from the past, then that is why they, continue to perpetuate that negative behavior. But it's just about like respecting where people are. And if where they are is not where you are, then by all means cut them from your life. Just don't allow yourself to carry that resentment. Give yourself the time and space you need to process your emotions, to feel your pain, so that you can release them, so that you can like let go of the pain and grief. But you have to allow yourself to feel it first. Like that's the key to releasing your emotions, is actually to just accept them. It sounds counterintuitive, but if you try to dismiss your emotions, or if you try to let it go by like not thinking about it, that's repression, right? But there needs to be a sense of clarity of being able to separate the two. Like there's a need to be able to separate, like that distinction, like I was saying, of, giving someone grace, someone deserving respect and forgiveness and grace, even though their behavior was wrong, even though they treated you in ways that you did not deserve. Like having that separation of like, that is where that person is. That is as far as, their levels of consciousness and self-awareness allow them to, behave. They're stuck on that level. I can't change them, you can't change them, you can't control anyone but yourself. But when you understand that and you can let that go, it's like, that doesn't negate the pain you felt. That doesn't mean you can't grieve. That doesn't mean that you can't process feelings of pain. Both can occur. I don't know if I'm expressing that well, but it's like, it's that separation. It's being able to discern the difference, the nuance between things. Another form, or another interpretation of this card, I should say, is about communication. We also have, it's right in front of the card of the Dancer, which has the keyword of self-expression. So maybe that is another thing that you should, you should try doing in order to process this and to release the influence, to release the hold it has on you. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have to tell, if this was a person, you don't have to tell the Queen of Swords how horrible she was and what you think of her. I'm not going to advise on whether you should do that or not, but I will say that journaling is a really healthy, helpful habit, especially when you are dealing with complex situations and emotions. I feel like the actual act of writing it out, it also helps you gain insight. It helps you see things and make connections or have a different perspective on things when you actually write it out onto the paper. But if that's not your thing, this could also just be talking to someone about it, talking to a friend or a therapist, communicating what it is, and like having, sometimes just being heard helps you process, the pain. But you could also gain insight from that, by sharing. You may have another person's perspective to help you reframe what happened in the past. So a few different ways of interpreting that card. But, in addition to the journaling and communication of some kind, like I said, there needs to be like this sort of discernment, cutting away also just what serves you and what does not. Like, I hate using these terms because I feel like when they become so overused, they become cliches. But like, there's so much that we gain from past experiences, right? But there needs to be like this level of discernment of like, you can leave the pain in the past. Like, if you give yourself the opportunity to process your emotions and to let them go, you can leave that in the past and take the wisdom with you, right? So I don't really agree with the forgive and forget. Forgive by all means, but don't forget. Like, and that, I don't mean that in the sense of holding grudges or resentment. It's in the sense of allowing yourself to learn from your past and to carry that wisdom with you. So like, that's another way of like the discernment. So there needs to be more decisiveness. There needs to be more discernment so that you can have that clarity of being able to reframe things, from a healthier perspective. I hope that made sense. If it did, like I said, if it did, let me know in the comments. But I do want to go ahead and get a few lyric cards now. So just for any last messages. The whole world is my home. That is so definitely like relating to the cosmic egg sense of being like interconnected, like the interconnectedness of all things. But also when you are in alignment with yourself, when you know who you are and you are unashamed of it, then your external circumstances do not matter because you feel home within yourself. So in that sense, like, the whole world can literally be your home. Like, wherever you are is home. And I won't give up. So even though like this journey may be difficult, like keep your balanced pace, but don't give up, because like this is amazing energy you are like moving through. So I hope that this encourages you to face the, whatever this is, whatever the past was, to face it and process it so that you can move forward and that you don't resist. You don't have resistance within this journey because it's leading you somewhere beautiful. I feel like the color schemes there go really nicely. But to end us off, let's just get one more little lyric card. Seriously? Don't ever give up. Dope. Okay, so this has happened once before. except I think this card came out first and this one came out second. Like the fact that these are so, like the white cards, these are all like written in the first person. They're all lyrics that are in the first person. So I think of them more as like affirmations. Whereas these I call, you know, guidance and encouragement cards because they're like written in the second person or just, you know, or third person, whatever. But my point is the fact that both of these cards came out is really funny. And if you happen to watch the video where you saw both of these cards come out in a reading, please let me know because I think it's really funny. It's like, don't ever give up. And this is the response, I won't give up. So, like, clearly that is the emphasis. Just keep moving through it. Keep working through your emotions, and face your past. Don't be afraid to, because this is beautiful energy. It's just that you don't want to get so caught up in your ambitions or your creative projects. Like those are great aspects, but there's also a need to, you know, really connect to who you are and to make sure that you're like maintaining the right motivations. The motivation being of being in alignment with who you are and expressing yourself, your soul, your unique individuality, of coming into that, well, I was going to say individuation for the Jungians out there, but self-actualization is like what this card makes me think of. So like you are on this path. You can most certainly achieve higher and higher levels of consciousness and self-awareness, and you can become home within yourself and be strong and grounded in who you are while pursuing, you know, whether it's creative pursuits or whatever your ambitions are. Just make sure that you're following what is in alignment with you, and letting go of your resistance so that you can process the past and not have it have an effect on you. Like this, I often think of like what I was talking about with resentment is like there's a need to understand that when you have resentment towards someone, when you are unwilling to forgive someone, you literally are giving them power over you. That person might not even be in your life anymore, and they are still affecting the way you live your life. They are still affecting how you feel about yourself or however it shows up. Or it's like driving you in, you know, a sort of desperate way. Don't let them have power over you. You don't have to give them power. So like if you can work through your emotions and release them, like especially if this was like a specific person in your past, do you want that person to have power over you? Do you want that person to have influence over you? I would say hell no. They don't need to have a presence in your life anymore, but as long as you hold on to that resistance, they do. So if resentment is a hard thing for you to let go of, like hopefully that made sense and offered you another way of looking at it so that to make the process easier. Like I said, still give yourself time to process your emotions. It's a long, hard journey, but don't give up because this is amazing and you are so, so powerful. The more you step into this energy, the stronger you become and the more unstoppable, the more, you know, like in your power you are. So just keep that in mind. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. And don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to see you in my next one.